Okay, what I want to do here is to build us a little widget so that we have something that we can surface. When I first teach my material lighting classes, my basic material lighting classes, I like to cover all the different kind of ways that you can apply surfaces, not just applying bitmaps. Most people teach a material lighting class as a bitmap 101 class, like we unwrap everything, we put bitmaps on everything, and well, that is something that we do in the industry. I can text your entire object without ever touching a bitmap and applying a bitmap to an object. So here's examples of some pieces that my students have done that are basically done with a variety of techniques. Okay, so this is basically done with shaders, custom shaders built, custom materials, procedurals, some tileable bitmaps, and it does have a couple of custom bitmaps. This little smiley face is a custom bitmap, the flag's a custom bitmap, but this has not been unwrapped. Okay, this is not bitmap 101. Here's another example of one. This was entirely done using shaders and procedural textures, some vertex painting. So it's not bitmap. Here's another one. This was done. I don't think there's any bitmap on this at all. This is all done using procedural textures and tileable textures. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with unwrapping something and painting custom bitmaps. That's exactly what you do in a lot of cases. But I start off teaching my basic material lighting classes, understanding all the different ways that you can do things and all the benefits of all the benefits and drawbacks of no matter which way that you go. So what we want to do here first is to just build us a little widget that we can use to surface with. Okay, so we're going to do some spline modeling. Yes, I know, never spline model. I hear people say that all the time, never spline model. They just don't know what the hell they're talking about. Well, actually, they're correct. They shouldn't spline model because they don't know what they're doing, but we know what we're doing. Okay, we're going to start out with just a circle here. Now, before we get too far in here, what I want to go in here is actually come in and go to my unit setup. You want to adjust max because max is kind of odd man out when it comes to softwares. First thing we want to do in here, in this portion in here, all you're doing is telling the computer how you want to use your measuring tools, what kind of units. By default, max uses generic units. We're going to come up here and tell it to use US standard, and I like to use feet with decimal inches. I don't want to put fractions in, so I use feet with decimal inches. So like I said, all this is doing is just actually giving us the measurement on our ruler, so to speak. But when you go up here and you go system unit setup, max is kind of unique in that you can change the scale of the world. Okay. The problem is that max by default, it's in inches. Okay. And so max's scale of its world doesn't match other softwares, because if you go on something like Maya, it uses centimeters. Mudbox uses centimeters, ZBrush uses centimeters, Unreal is centimeters, Unity is centimeters. Everybody, matter of fact, pretty much everybody is centimeters except Max, and theirs is in inches. So what I like to do is come in here and go ahead and change this to centimeters. That way, everything that we make in here is the same scale, and when and if we want to take it into other softwares, like if we want to take it into ZBrush or Mudbox or something, the scale will work with those. Will be exactly the same. Okay, so we just made a circle in here, and at first I don't really care how big the circle is, just got to make the circle, and we want to center it. So we want to right-click move, and down here you have X, Y, and Z coordinates in here, okay? So if you click on these little arrows and hold down and drag, you can move it around. We want it to be at the origin, which is 0, 0, 0. So the way Max works is whenever you have these little tumblers down here, if you just use your right mouse button and you right-click on them, it'll zero those out, and so now it's at the center of the origin. Now we're going to go to our modified tab, and then we'll decide how big we want this. And I'm going to go for 6 inches on this. Okay. So we're going to go 6 inches on this circle. Okay. Which means it's a foot across, because that's a radius. So this is 1 foot across. Now the reason I'm going to be kind of dictating these is that, nowadays we're working in a physical world, okay? Physically accurate shaders, physically accurate lights. So we need to have objects that are the actual scale. I see people all the time building, and they just build things whatever scale. We want to build these the correct scale, because procedurals are based on a specific scale. So And there's nothing magical about 6 inches. I'm just trying to make something that's would be, you know, about a foot, 2 foot on our, you know, that we're going to be surfacing. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to clone this. And we don't want an instance. An instance means one that's exactly like this, that if we change one, it changes the other. So I don't want to do that. I want to make a copy. Okay. And on this one, let's see, we're going to go for 2 inches on this one. Okay. And I'm going to go in here. And I want to get my Scene Explorer here. Dock that over here. Okay, that's better. Okay, so at this point, we no longer need these as circles. Now, you know, people work in different ways. Okay, I can right click and convert this to an editable spline is one way, so I can get to those tools. You can stack on top. So if you want to make a modifier stack, you can come in here and go edit spline. And now we have those tools. It doesn't matter. Either way will work. Okay, so then what I want to do is attach this piece to them. So there's one piece. And then we're going to move this off to the left. So we'll go to move. And what we wanted is we're going to go -2 feet and move it over to the left. So that's -2 feet on your X. Then we're going to pick these 2 sections and we're going to delete those. All right, now what I want to do is mirror this and have one on the other side. Well, right now, if I come up and I get my mirror tool, it's mirroring on itself, and I don't want it. I want it to mirror on the origin. So what you want to do is you want to go up here under your reference coordinate system, and we want to change this to world coordinates. So we're going to use the world's coordinates, not the object's coordinates. And when we do that, we also have to change this pivot point, and we change the bottom one, which is world pivot points, okay? And so it's going to use the center. So now when I come in here and I do my mirror, it'll create one on the opposite side of that. And I want to go down here and click copy so that I'm making a copy. I'm not just flipping that one. And then I've got those, a mirror of that. Okay. So when I come in here, I want to go ahead and attach this one to it. So we're just going to go over here and click attach. So these are one thing. And now what I need to do is connect these. Okay, so when I'm going to do this, I want to turn my snap on because I want to snap. But you'll see by default this snaps to the grid, and I don't want to snap to the grid. So on these snap tools, if you right click on them, you'll get to their settings. I'm going to turn off grid points and I'm going to put it on vertex because I want to snap to this vertex that's at the end of this line. So now what I'm going to do is connect these, and I'm going here and I'm going to go create line. Now, people get confused on this all the time because I tell them to go in here and create a line across here. So what they do is come in here and create a new line across here like this. Okay, and that's a totally separate line. Now, you can do that, but then you have to come back and attach this. Okay, so what we're going to do is a different way. When you're inside of your actual editable spline, there's a create line button in here. And if I do that, then this will already be part of that. So I'm clicking, and then you right click to stop. And then I'm going to do again, click, right click to stop. And now that's all together as one thing. Okay. So now if we kind of tumble down up into a orthographic view here, what we're going to do here is we're going to make this 3-dimensional now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a modifier on this, and we're going to use the bevel modifier. Okay, now as soon as I do that, I'm going to see something. Let's go ahead and put us a shader on here. Let's just go ahead and put us just a base garbage shader on here, a standard shader, just gray, put it on here. And what you're going to see is that what we have here is 2 holes, okay, but we don't have the shape. Now, the reason that is because we didn't weld these vertices. So in other words, this is not a complete shape because when we created these, we didn't weld these vertices together, okay? So anytime that you're coming in using the bevel modifier, if you're getting holes like this when you're doing something, it's because the outside is not complete. So what we're going to do is go ahead and just grab all these vertices, and I'm just going to hit weld, okay? I have a real small threshold, which basically will just weld the things that are coincident or sitting around top of each other. And so now you'll see that if I come in here and I grab this piece and I pull it out, it's welded onto those, okay? So now when I come up to my bevel, then this is going to be set correctly. Okay. All right. Now, when you're building from splines, one of the things to notice is I've got a shader on this, and you'll see that this is black, and you'll see that this has got the gray on it here. That's because the normals are facing down on it right now. Okay. But that's because we haven't set up any of our parameters yet. Okay. So we don't need this. All we really need is this right here. Okay. Now, the way that I use this is level 1 is a bevel on the back side. Level 3 is a bevel on the top, and level 2 is how tall we want our object to be. So I think what we're going to go with here is, say, 2 inches thick. So our object is 2 inches thick. Now I like to see the wireframe on when I'm working. So I'm hitting, what we're going to do is hit F4 on our keyboard. Then we'll be able to see our wireframe on our object. So like I said, this is the level, so we don't change the outline. If we change the outline, then we're making this flare in and out, and I don't really want it to do that. I don't want it to go just straight, so this would be 0. And then for our thickness on our bevel on the top, let's go for, say, 0.5. Let's just try that. Yeah, that'll be a good size for our height on that. So we're just going to copy that. And I'm going to give it the same height on the bottom. So that'll give us the same thickness down there. Okay. Now, if a perfect bevel, if you're trying to create a perfect bevel, it goes at a 45-degree angle, which means that this outline would be the exact same width also. Okay, so you would see, I'm going to turn my grid off here, that's a nice bevel on that back side. Now, when we do it here and we paste it on this outline, you're going to have a problem because it's going to want to flare it out. And we want to go back in. So basically that's a minus. You just put a minus in front of it and then it'll go back in. Now, one of the things I do like to point out when I'm building this method is what's happening to our actual spline here, okay? As we're building this way, you will see that what we're doing is that we're swelling the object. So in other words, it's getting bigger when we're putting this bevel on it, okay? Which may be fine, but there are sometimes maybe we want that outside to be what it is, okay, and it to be on the inside. If that's the case, what you do is you take this minus outline that you put in down here, and you put this in your start outline. And now you'll see that it's on the inside instead of the outside, okay? It doesn't really matter on what we're doing here, but that's what's going on, okay? So I'm just going to leave it like that. Now, the other thing that you'll notice about this is it's very faceted in here. And that's because our underlying circle, okay, is being optimized, okay? So if you go back down to your basic circle, okay, this is optimizing it. Max likes to optimize everything. So I can come in here and give it more subdivisions in here to smooth it to whatever I want. Another thing I do is click adaptive, and then adaptive will just automatically give it, you know, what I want. Now, whether I use the adaptive or not is based on whether I'm going to use this for subdivision surfaces. You know, if I'm going to be using this for subdivision surfaces, then I may, you know, keep it down low, okay, because I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut the top of this, and so this is all quads, and then I'm going to subdivide it, okay? Just according to what you're trying to do. We're not going to subdivide. We're going to do this a different way. I'm building this. It does not need to be a subdivision surface. So I'm just going to go ahead and go adaptive so it's nice and smooth, and we'll just go from there. Okay. Okay, so now would be a good time to go ahead and save this. Okay, so we're just going to go save as. Now, I'd already set my project up, so I have a project folder for this. And we'll just call this widget. Let's call this surfacing widget. I like the term surfacing better than texturing because maybe I don't want it to have textures. Okay, I want it to be smooth maybe. Okay, so anyway, So here we go. We've saved this. Now, I like to work, always giving myself an out. Okay, so we're going to name this, and we'll just call this, same thing, surfacing widget. You get a habit of naming your stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to clone this as a copy. Okay, and then I'm just going to turn the original one off, and that way I can always come back to the original one if I need to. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and do what I call killing this. Okay, basically I'm going to collapse the stack. So I'm just going to right click in here, convert this to an editable poly. Okay, and so now it no longer has all that construction history in it. Okay, periodically I just want to get out of the construction history. Okay, but I've got one saved over here that in case I decide I want to change something, I can go back to it. Okay. All right, so the next thing we want to do is, this is a nice surface that we can put some textures on it, but I want to give it some crevices, and so I want some what I would call innies and outies. Okay, so we're going to go in here, and we're going to make a box. Okay, so I'm just going to go in here, create a box. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just put my base shader on that. Okay, and there's nothing magical about the size of this. Let's go with something like maybe, 8 inches wide. And so maybe about 1.5 feet. And let's just go ahead and round this to 3 inches tall. Okay, there's nothing magical about these numbers. Okay. All right. Now you'll see that as I click on this, it's still giving my pivot point. I want to go back up here and change my pivot point now. I'm going to go back to view and go back to object. So it's on its object. Okay. So what we want to do is move this into it. Okay. So we're going to go something like that, put it into it. And then I want it, this bottom edge to be about in the center of this. So I'm going to grab my Z axis and pull it up. So it's not to be perfect where it's about halfway into that. Okay. And something like that looks pretty good. Okay. I want to leave me some room around here. I don't want to pop it into there. Now we're going to hold our shift key down, and on the X axis, I'm going to make a copy of it over here. Okay. And I'm going to take it and make it approximately as a copy, not an instance, about the same distance across. So in other words, both of these are about the same distance. Okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. And then what I'm going to do on this box is, I'm going to use this one. We're going to do a Boolean, and I'm going to use this one to cut into that. And I'm going to do a union on this one. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and convert this one to editable poly. And then I'm going to come in here and grab all my edges, okay, because I want to chamfer those. Now you can drag a box around there. You can also do Control A. We'll select all those, and then we're going to go to chamfer down here. Now I'm going to go ahead and click the little settings box to the right of that, and that way I can actually come in here and decide how much I want to actually chamfer this. And I think I'm going to go for a 0.5 on this. Here again, nothing magical, just kind of eyeballing this, but I want kind of a chamfered edge on that. And then that works pretty good. I'm going to set that in. Okay, so now's a good time to go ahead, save as. Now in Max, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, you have a plus button. Okay, so you shouldn't be saving over your same file all the time. I'm going to hit plus button, and that way it's going to save in stages. Okay. So now you'll see up here, it says surfacing widget 01, and that way I can save in stages in case something messes up. All right, so what we're going to do here is just do a Boolean. So you have to be careful with Booleans because they can create some kind of nasty geometry sometimes, but for what we're going to be doing, this is going to be fairly simple. So we're going to go to our create menu, and then we're going to change from standard primitives here to compound objects. And then we're going to use this pro Boolean. Okay. Now Boolean is the old ancient Boolean that was built into Max forever. Okay. It's actually, quite nice now. Okay. In Max 2017, but if you're using 2016, this is the old, Max's Boolean. This has actually been updated. Okay. So it's a nicer Boolean now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go with a pro Boolean because I'm going to act like because a lot of people are still on 2016, so we're going to do that, okay, instead of being a 2017. 2017, I probably use Boolean. Okay, so we're going to go start picking, and then I'm going to say subtraction, so I'm going to tell it to cut that out of there, okay? So that'll make a nice cut in there. Now, for this one, I'm a Boolean too, but what I want is a union, okay, because I want it to add to it. So I click on that, and that's going to add to that. Now, if I go over to my modify, one of the things to know about this is those pieces are still in here. They're called operands. So if I click on operand, okay, I'm going to drag this out so we can see a little bit more. Here are your operands in here. So if I click operand and I pick the box, which is the second box, I can actually come in here and actually still move this around, okay? They're actually still in here. And I can also go over here and click display. Right now it's displaying my results, but if I display operands, then you can see this piece, and I can actually grab this piece, or I can say the result, okay? And I can still grab it and move it around and see what it's doing with the cut, okay? So that's one of the cool things about a Boolean is that you can still manipulate it afterwards, okay? But now that we've gotten this the way I want it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to collapse this, convert it to editable poly, so we're back to a poly. Now, one of the things that happens sometimes when you're using something like a Boolean is your smoothing groups may get kind of messed up, okay? So if we look at this and I go to F4, can you see that we got some kind of weird anomalies in here, and our edges are kind of rounded a little bit? And so what I really want to do is go in here and reset the smoothing groups on this. So I'm going to go in here to poly, and those areas are already selected. I'm going to go down here to my auto smooth. I'm going to use 15 degrees, and I'm going to click auto smooth, and that will fix those. So now we don't have those shading anomalies in there, and our smoothing groups are fixed on those objects, okay? And then I think the last thing I would do on the building of this widget is center its pivot point. It's using the pivot point that we originally created on this circle. At this point, I don't need it that way, so I'm just going to go to my hierarchy panel, effect pivot only, center to object. Be sure and turn this off. A lot of people forget to turn this off, and it is sticky, so it'll stay in that. And now we have a nice widget that we can use to surface with. So we want some flat areas, we want some curved areas, we want some insets, we want some protrusions. These will all be nice for us to be able to start putting some surfacing on there, okay? So we're going to go ahead and save this again, save as, hit our plus button again. So that is the building of our base widget, okay? And when we come back on our next video, we'll go in here and we'll actually start putting some materials on this and starting to make it look pretty. All right. Thank you so much.